What's the y-intercept going to be on this graph?
Y.
The y-intercept.
-1.
It's still going to be -1. And we can determine that because of the setup. Now, we can also then just take our xy table or xy chart, plug in values again. I'm going to start with -1, 0, 1, 2. And 1/2 to the -1st. Isn't that where we invert our fraction? So this 1/2 to the -1st ends up being 1/1/2. So you're taking, ultimately that's 1 divided by 1/2. So you have to KFC and do all that kind of stuff. And you end up with 1 times 2/1. So that's 2, and then minus the 1 is 1. Anything to the 0th power is always 1. Minus 1 is 0. And then then 1/2 minus 1 would be -1/2. And 1/2 squared was 1/4. Minus 1 was a -3/4. Nice. -3/4, just that. So -1, 1. How did 0? How can I have, so I was wrong on my, so the y-intercept is not -1. The y-intercept is 0. The limit, the lowest that this can go is -1. So 1, -1/2, or 2 is -3/4. 3 would be closer, and then so it, my apologies on that y-intercept issue, because this is not in slope-intercept form, so that doesn't necessarily mean it's the y-intercept, but it is the limit. Yes. So the domain, what values could we plug in for x? Any. Domains, any number, any real number. And the range would be
Any number greater than
y is greater than -1.
Can we solve for just 3?
Do what?
Can we solve for just 3 points, lines?
It's a little harder with the, really I should have had a 5th one to have determined where this point up here was, to be able to graph it a little more accurately. So doing 3 isn't a great idea, huh? Yes?
On the range, you want us to write it like that?
That's the easiest way to write it, rather than putting it in words. But yeah, that's our set notation. Okay, so was this the one? No. Yeah, that was the one, because it was doubling every
2 hours.
20 minutes. Okay, so a certain bacteria population doubles every 20 minutes, beginning with 10 cells in the culture, and the population can be represented by the function of this, where B is the number of bacteria cells, and T is the time in 20-minute increments. So how many will there be after 2 hours? So how many 20-minute increments are there in 2 hours? 6. You have a question? How many 20-minute increments are in 1 hour? 3. So in 2 hours would be 6. So we're going to plug in 6 for our T. 2 to the 6th, you have, what is that? 2 to the 5th is 32. So 2 to the 6th would be 64. So the number of bacteria is 640 after 2 hours.
That
Pretty
no
simple.
wonder everyone has the plague. No wonder everyone has the plague recently throughout the
Mm-hmm.
world.
Okay, identify exponential behavior. Let's see. Concentration. Determine whether the set of data shown here displays exponential behavior. Does that look like exponential behavior?
What's exponential?
Exponential, that's where we have y equals something to the x power. Your base to the x power.
Yeah, it looks good. It's being divided by 2 every time you add 5.
Okay, so y is being divided every time. I'm good with that. What about x being
Added by 5.
every time. It's the same.
I'm not greatly sure with this one. We do have the half. Okay.
So we only have to state the y.
So your base, because your difference on your y is a half, that you're dividing by 2, that's your base, and then it would be an exponential. The domain values are a regular interval and the range values difference by a positive common factor that are probably exponential. It may involve this, so it's kind of a,
So you have to put probably in some of them?
I guess so, you'd have to plot it to see.
Can we say maybe on each of them? Just maybe.
Maybe,
I don't know.
yes, maybe
Is X the
no.
answer?
I'm not sure how much I want to do
Or
this.
50%.
Anyway, what do we have here? We are
That-
good on top because we have a constant rate on
And then you're
top,
adding 4 on bottom.
but we don't have a common difference, or it's not a common difference, we don't have a common factor there, do we?
Wait, yeah. I don't even know.
I'm saying no because
I'm saying no because
there isn't a number I can take times 12 to get 16.
Yeah.
I can do a fraction, so that would be what, 4/3?
I don't know.
So if I took 12 times 4/3, that'd give me 16. Just taking 16 times 4/3 give me 20. Nah.
Just simple math time.
64 over 3 is 21 and 1/3. So, no.
Why do we have to solve this one?
I don't know. Just become familiar with it.
Yay, lesson time. Or not lesson.
Yeah.
Assignment time. We got like all class to do it.
But that's the worst part. 'cause then
I
you
wasn't
get
here
the
Friday,
worst
so
part.
I was.
It's not like I'm
Yeah, why did you leave?
Guys, be quiet, be quiet, be
I
quiet.
got sick. You went over stuff to do.
No, you can't. You asked for it. Squeeze. Ray, would you
Yeah.
have these?
That's all.
Pass that one downstairs.
Pass it around and you're right back at it.
I forgot to get my
I wrote the
piece of
wrong
paper.
thing.
Or when you give everyone a piece of paper,
I'm not going.
Neither am
Have
I.
your Cupid shuffle.
My hair has knots in it.
Yeah.
Wait, Quinn, you're not going to block.
What? I'm not going to.
I do. I also have a birthday party for my sister.
I'm wearing a dress.
I know, like, I don't think you understand this. And this one, I don't get asked what I want for my birthday, I only get asked what I want.
Hey, if I write my name as Mac,
From now
you'll know
on,
it's
I
me.
think
Should.
so close to asking.
Did you just say it was annoying?
Let's be friendly.
Thank
Alright, what I want is for you to do 10 through 22. On 21 and 22, that's determining whether it's an exponential, just what we just finished. Try. As long as you try, you're not going to get it wrong. Okay? I want you to see if you can figure it out. And I will get you scratch paper because on the directions on 10 through 19 it says graph a function. So you want some graph paper.
No.
And then find the values.
Did you say 10 through 19?
10 through 22.
Oh, yeah, I
Stop. Whatever that was.
We have to grab them all.
All 10 through 19, so that's 10 you do again.
So you're gonna have to grab 3 of them.
Yeah.
Language.
Capricorn.
I dislike very much.
Thank you.
No, I use hate because it's strong. Dislike is not strong enough.
Dislike is not strong enough.
Create your XY chart table.
Y equals 2 times 8.
That's good, man. What do you do?
That's not
It's
true.
not good.
I watched a 3-year-old like all the time.
It's not that we weren't bad. It's that we don't want to do it.
Are you gonna pass back the paper?
No, they're not one. You only gave Ira one.
I hand them out individually and just let you do that.
Sorry, corn dog. Corn dog.
Does she have to?
Yeah, not that many.
Go.
I need that. You need that.
I've gotten this far.
No, you cannot multiply those two because of order of operation. What's the order of operation?
I still look
Exponents
at
before
this.
you multiply, right? Okay, so what you have is set up just fine. Now pencil. So you're going to want to put in to your XY. Hey. Moment. So we're going to do 2, 1, 0, 1, 2. Okay, so if we plug -2, 8 to the negative second would become 1 over 8 to the second, which is
Sorry,
1 over 64. Right. Move that down. And there's times. And then times 2. So it makes it 132.
No, it's order of operations.
Well, there's no exponent.
I have a feeling I'm not going to be helping.
2 times 64.
Let's look at this. All right, so let's check the first one together. I can already hear you gibber jabbering about it. Y equals 2 times
8 squared.
8 to the x.
Yeah.
Oh, that is
So if you pick the plain old normal numbers like we would normally get to or use, we'd do that. Now I cannot multiply my 8 times 2 because that's multiplication and I have that exponent that's applied to the 8 by itself. If this was all in parentheses, then you could do that, but it's not, so we can't do that. So when you work this out, you're going to take the 8, and we're starting with the -2, and it'll be 2 times whatever we get inside here now. 8 to the negative second is 1 over 8 to the second, which is 1 over 64. And then again, we're taking that times this 2 now. So that's 1/32. Very small. That's your y value at, well, x is -2.
Oh, wait, how did the exponent?
Remember the negative exponent flips it, takes it to across the fraction line. In order to get rid of the negative exponent, we take it down.
Wait, and then times it by 2.
The 2 is the out front,
Oh, that.
and then the 2 carried it over. 2 finally applied it at this step. to reduce that down. Okay, then if you plug in -1, make that -1, make that 8. So this would be 2/8, which is 1/4. 8 to the -1st would be 8/1, or 1/8.
How'd you do 0?
Then times 2.
How would you do 0?
So now 0, anything to the 0th power is no 1. So it's 8 to the 0th power is 1 times 2 is just 2. And then we have 8 to the 1st is 8 times 2 is 16. And then 8 to the 2nd is 64 times 2 is 128. Obviously, this is not going to be graphable, is it?
No.
With what we have. But you get the idea for these 4 points to be able to get them lined up.
Wait, are you supposed to graph that now?
And then graph them, yeah.
Alright, so I'll do it on this page.
Now, did that say find the y-intercept and state the domain and range? Well, your y-intercept is 0, 2.
Oh, okay, well, the x is 2, so the y is.
Oh, and then you just do the range.
Ah.
It's like barely above the line. Go over 2.
So -2, 1/32 would, yeah, barely be above, 1 and 1, -1 and 1/4, 0, 2, 1/16. Somewhere in there, right. So it's somewhere up in there, and then you can create your graph from that then. Don't do the wavy thing though. And don't cross the line. Alright. What is we know what the y-intercept is, that's where it crosses at 2. What's the range, or the domain? Any number. We can plug in whatever number we want, we'll be able to kick out some value. No matter what values we plug in though, our y, or our range is only going to be y, where y is greater than 0.
So that's your answer?
That's your answer for range. Domain would be any number. And y-intercept 2. So we've got a point for the graph, point for the y-intercept, point for the domain, point for the range. Good thing you only have 10 of those then.
That's 3 seconds.
Because you can plug in any value for x and it's going to spit out a real answer, an actual number. Sure, you can look in the back book to help you, not to do it. Like some of the extra credit I've been seeing, that's all net or odds. That's nice.
They're just doing extra credit and checking it, you know? They erase the events that they get wrong, which is all of them.
It's an interesting relationship that takes place there.
I always do the easy ones.
As
Wow.
Mr.
That's
Adolf once said, aren't cheating, you're not trying.
That is not
It's not as if you ain't cheating.
Yeah, like 63 through 68, it's counting. Those are easy.
Hey, go over number 11, this is a fraction, and
Okay.
I'm
Read the equation.
Yes,
it's y equals 2 times 1/6 to the x.
Because 12
So this is all in parentheses.
Yeah.
or not.
Okay.
Oh, here we go. We do like 4.
You just try all of them. Please.
Are you still recording?
Okay. Yes.
Oh.
-2.
Nice.
Plugging that in. So I'm going to start over here. I'm going to leave the 2 off. We'll put it in at the end. Okay, you can handle that. So I have 1/6 to the negative second power. So to get that with the positive exponent, that's going to make 1/6 on bottom to the second power.
How is that possible?
Because that's how you get rid of the negative exponent, is move it across the fraction bar. As a fraction, then it's to the whole thing. It's not just to the 1. So it's the whole thing. So the whole thing is over 1. To get rid of it, you have to move it to the bottom. And that gets rid of the negative exponent. We can go ahead and apply the 1/6 to the second power. That becomes 1/36. And then when you get to this point, you should start recognizing that 1 over 1/36 implies division. And dividing by a fraction, you have to keep flip change, the real keep flip change. 36 over 1, which is just 36. Times 2.
Do you always have to do negative
Okay, so like
2,
we're counting by
negative
like
1,
10
and all this?
Well, let's go ahead and figure out the rest of the points and see if that's the only one. What's that? Okay.
By 2.
I left off the 2 to start with. They said we'd put that back in at the end. So I put all 5 points in. If that's the only one that's not on your graph, I wouldn't adjust your intervals. Okay. If you need to on somebody, let's go on though. We can see if we'll need to in just a second. Now I'm going to make this to the negative first, because I'm plugging in a negative 1 now. So that's 1 over 6. So that's just 6 times 2. You okay with this? That's my 1 over 1 divided by 1/6 is 1 over 1 times 6 over 1. I'm just shortcutting that to 6 over 2, which is 12. And then 0 is, if I make this 0, this is 1 times 2 is 2. 1/6 to the 1 power, the first power is 1/6. 2 times 1/6 would be 2/6, which is 1/3.
I don't like the 2.
Madeline, we're going to the first power, and I'll put the 2 in front of it this time. So 1/6 to the 1th power is just going to be 2 then times 1/6, which is 2/6, which is 1/3. And 2 makes that 1 over 36 instead, which is 1 over 18 then.
72.
Well, it's 2 on top, so you're going to reduce your 2 and 36 to 236, which is 118.
That's like impossible to grade.
Just do your best. Once you get down by the limit there, then don't worry about it. Okay, let's go through the, maybe we better plot this. I would probably go by 2s on this one if I was doing an interval on your sheets. So we're going to treat this as such. I'm going to have my y-intercept would then be at 2 if I'm going by intervals of 2. And then at negative 1 of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that'd be my negative 1, 12. And my 0, 2. And then 1 is 1/3. And you can see then I just continue at that rate. We're not finished because we need the y-intercept.
Oh, we have to. Oh, are you kidding me? I just did it on the wrong.
It'd be the same thing
Is
as the last
2.
one, wouldn't it?
Y is the intercept of 2, but the domain is the same because we can still put in any number. But the range on this one, that limit is as it approaches. Maybe that last one was that. I don't remember. Anyway, your range is any value of y where y is greater than 0. So was that what the last one was?
Yep.
Okay. So it does end up being the same, just coincidentally.
Well, I mean, if the limit's 0, it'll even be that.
Because you take it by 2.
The range is any value greater than where y is 0.
It's like always confusing.
Okay, now we have 12.
Just asking Mr. Clevenger to do all of our homework for us.
Takes longer.
Takes longer, but you get the right answer.
This one's different than the last one.
They're
different.
all the same. It's
Not
just
different
hey,
numbers, but like.
technically,
That's
12
not the same. Definitely
12
not.
is just basically the exact same as 11, except you don't take the end result times 2.
Right.
Thanks, cool.
Still makes sense. It still makes sense.
Just think about it and do it. I don't like believe in yourself. Make your dreams.
See, I believe in myself and I think I'm doing great, and then I'm gonna bomb in this assignment.
Really, the only thing that should be any difficult is the negative exponent
And I
on a
just, like,
fraction.
I'm not.
Oh, this is all different.
look at like 17 and 19.
You get through those 5 numbers every time.
How?
Hey,
I'm gonna ask again. What is this gonna be best for?
Engineering
But I'm
plan
not
on
going
becoming an
for
engineer.
and
I'm
population
becoming a
study.
plumber, okay? Is
I
everything
don't plan on
engineering?
studying
Just
population.
because you're not going to do it doesn't mean you don't need it. Because,
Oh.
for instance, my Aunt Veronica went to school and stuff originally to become a lawyer, and then ended up becoming a lawyer, and now works at CDL. You can have different jobs even though you want to do
Yeah,
something.
but I plan on doing this, and I plan on staying
What
with
are
that.
you planning on doing?
Being a student.
An X-ray nurse?
Nursery nurse.
A nursery nurse?
Nursing nurse?
So you're going to
So
work
you
for,
need to
like,
be able to identify if
You have to check
bacteria
vitals.
is exponentially growing
within such a
No.
in a little child.
Forget that career head.
Yeah, but seriously,
I'll do
you have
daycare.
to. Daycare, even then, you have to keep track of how much you get paid per day, and like
You have to
double
keep track of
depending
how
on
tall
many
the
kids
students
you
are.
paid. You know,
No,
like,
you don't. No, you don't.
okay, it's not always going to do math lessons. We're not
That's
always.
why you have a ruler
My
or a measuring tape.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Well, my day,
Your husband never thinks it came out of
I'll run a daycare. My kids would be scared.
Or you know, it's true.
I would never run a daycare. I would like go insane.
That'd be the worst job.
Like daddy daycare.
But you're technically
There's too many little kids.
I love little
And don't
kids.
become the person that takes care of children.
remember one kid at daycare, we had to call him Alligator, I don't know why. Then I figured out that he bit people.
Whoa. So that literally made you call him alligator.
That's right, don't you?
Yeah, like his name on like his little popsicle stick that he draw at Canada, Alligator.
That's amazing.
Everyone actually clapped.
I want to be alligator.
So validated.
So it's like Cody.
After a while,
Susie.
The daycare I went to was
Alligator.
pretty normal, so.
That's some weird stuff right there.
Aw, next hard to.
English is super easy.
I'll get you with 95.
There's just
And maybe if you would not talk 24/7.
Gage, you're the one that talks to me. Which one is it?
She is
Miss Torley.
Tortellini. What is she?
Have we had her before?
No, is it?
Oh, Miss Collins.
Yeah, we're gonna go home because.
The old like.
Oh, is that gonna be able to go to the dance?
Suitor,
So what are you
yeah.
doing now?
Yeah, I saw her when I was walking down the
You can come to the
Oh, I love her, dude.
I don't think it.
Okay, well, shut up. I usually make sure I do. I'm going with you.
dance.
It's spot on.
Science, and we have to get ready.
All about that.
I like it.
You just do Lions, no, you did we.
I like the dances
I have Chicon and she got to
like
the reason she got there. No. When you go to prom, you don't have one. Every time someone went up there.
She's like,
Yes, you do.
I didn't hear
there's
it.
always a couple smokes.
You know what? I'm so glad that
If you were not to
Yeah.
That's what I just said.
Then they go,
Good practice
I
with
got
the
the
negative exponent.
If it's a
Yeah,
negative,
we can't be friends
you
anymore.
have to take it with a 9.
You're weird.
Did we need to take lab 44 times? Mr. Clevenger, let's just give me the answer.
We doing my wrong.
Corey, what'd you get for 12?
I don't know, what did I
get
have?
for 12, Gage?
Hey Corey,
That's a
let me finish
Like,
your
I don't
paragraph
know.
for the entire paper today.
Entire thing.
Well, Deanna,
Entire thing.
How do you know?
No, I did the entire thing.
I'm sorry, you have it so.
I just had one more thing. I just had
Okay,
Okay, so she looks like you? Like me?
I
You just keep going on that she'll like give you.
I'd rather stop so I have this great help.
I thought we were
I'm glad you got your paragraph.
Dude, Corey's a ninja quick scoping. It's like this.
That one, when I
You know
was
who's
in
better
first
sliding
day,
to Tyler?
when nurse said it, that does not look like
Seven.
that at all. But yes, it does.
So he's
No,
just,
it
just
didn't.
right.
Yes,
You know
I
that
don't
Corey's-
remember what it looked like.
It looked like Deanna, I swear.
It's so
I took my golf
Yeah.
not a quick scope.
I can't say it.
I was like laughing so hard.
I finished 19
Even the
Life is better
reserve
for
I
it.
was like, oh. So I just kept talking like I didn't even.
You have to
I
like
didn't do my stuff.
Her parents can live
Oh,
with
this
the
is like cost.
I know,
He's
sad.
gonna outlive us all. He's only like 10. No, he's only 14.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad.
Well, it's Friday.
He writes that every day.
You just bring a jug of water.
I've never seen this.
No! Well, I have.
I just said you
This is our only hour
Which
today.
I'll probably.
Oh, we
Okay.
have like every hour.
Actually,
How far are you?
I think
me and Chloe have one
How
more
far are you?
extra.
Tell me what kind of dinosaurs
That's
you
corn.
have. You can hunt dinosaurs and tame them and ride them.
Hey, your y-intercept should be easy to plug. You plug your 0 in. That's going to take your exponential to 1. Those should all be easy to find.
Even 0 times a fraction in 1.
Yeah, anything to 0. As long as it's all in parentheses, Gage.
Thank you.
Okay, so you do all that.
Good. Good.
Okay. Yes, I got one down.
Hey, have you guys ever heard of this thing called lost or something?
You remember when Adolf was right over there?
Have you guys ever heard of banishment? It's like
No, that's lies.
you're
I'm
like
gonna boil or
there's
something.
in like Oasis, and then there's like tribes that you can hunt by yourself, and you can like tame them and make them your no, seriously. Yeah.
Lights it on fire and
Like,
cooking a steak.
I don't know, it's kind of just like, except instead of hunting
All right.
dinosaurs, you hunt people.
I'm not going to go through it all, but there's your x and y values for number 13.
Thank you.
How fast did you do that?
Work them out already.
And
So
can I-
that's
Can I pay you
That's
to do
12.
this?
That's 12.
Sorry, 12. My bad.
So that's 12.
Yes. Again, you're plugging in the -2 for your x. That's going to make it 1 over 12 to the -2nd power. That is all over 1. So to get rid of that negative exponent, you drop it down. And then you have 1 to the over 12 to the 2nd power. That's 1 over 144. And when we have that 1 over situation, that's where we can just flip that and make it 144. I almost think this lesson's more about making sure that you know how to work negative exponents than it is anything else.
The negative exponents because
But you're right. You'll start seeing the pattern.
I'm not seeing anything. It gets easy.
Connie? Madeline?
Listen, babe, some of us are dumber than others.
admitting you're good doesn't mean you're
It was like really serious until we hit. It's like
John is so loud. So loud.
Or a big like tall tower.
fighting all the time in our school.
I've never laughed. Yeah, you think I know that? You gotta get it back.
I would get told honestly how.
That's true. That's true.
No.
I know, right?
Biggest game.
Wait, what?